the second part was, if you look at the founders' intent, senators were the, you know, representatives of the states and essentially nominated by the states. The 17th Amendment, right after the 16th, disabled that. Do you see any I think I've had this conversation many years ago with you. Don't remember the particulars, but do you see any practical way that that could ever be disabled? Because much of what is disastrous, you know, Justice Scalia said, is really out of the 17th Amendment. So a few years ago, I didn't even know what that was.
Right. So just to repeat what you said for those who may not be familiar, good civics lessons for the homeschoolers back there. The 17th Amendment was passed that allowed direct election of U.S. senators. Prior to that, the state legislators would appoint the U.S. senator. So we truly had the House of Representatives represented the people, and the U.S. Senate represented the states. That's how our founding fathers established it. When we moved to direct election of U.S. senators, the states no longer have a voice. And it was very important for the states to have a voice because they were supposed to be the checking power to the federal government. And that's what federalism means. Federalism, we have checks and balances across the 3 federal branches, but federalism is the checking of power between the state and the federal government. We lost that when we passed the 17th Amendment. I think that the idea of repealing the 17th Amendment is not a viable option at all. To try to educate people on that, the history of the 17th Amendment, I don't think can be achieved. But as many people who have been a part of the Virginia Tea Party Federation that I've led know, I am passionate about something called the Repeal Amendment. I worked with the Georgetown constitutional lawyer, Randy Barnett, and worked with a number of people across the country. And what it does is it really zeroes in and focuses on what the 17th Amendment created, the problem, and fixes it. What it says is this: if 2/3 of all state legislators pass a resolution to repeal an act of Congress, it's repealed. So if Georgia and Michigan and Carolina, you know, 2/3 of all the state legislators pass resolutions to repeal a legislation, any rule, regulation, or tax, it can be repealed. It basically is the same thing as what the 17th Amendment would do, except you don't have a representative, it's just the states doing it directly. Because the states need to have the ability to check the power of the federal government. You can imagine what Obamacare would look like right now if we had, as states, the ability to repeal. And this is very different than nullification. I get asked this question all the time. This is not nullification. Nullification is one state standing up and saying, I'm just going to ignore your law. I'm just not going to do it. That's nullification. We're just not going to do it. Repeal amendment is where 2/3 of the states have to be in agreement on what law or rule or regulation or tax they want to repeal. And that's been something that I would like to introduce in Congress to give more state power back to the states.
How realistically do you think that is looking at the blue state, red state balance?
It's actually, well, if we needed 2/3, it would be achievable. But as you know, to amend the U.S. Constitution, you have to get 3/4 of the states to ratify it.
Getting the repeal amendment is actually getting 2/3 of the states to agree.
Oh, well, but that's why you want it to be something egregious.
Yeah.
You don't want to just be able to repeal and change laws in Washington willy-nilly,
Yeah,
as they say.
Can you give an example of a law that's been passed recently? Probably, I guess, healthcare would be one.
It would be. That's the one.
That 2/3 of the states would agree. You know, she got half the attorneys general's prosecuted.
That's right.
Already.
That would be the one. You would want it to be something very egregious, because you don't want to swing balance in the extreme in the other direction. You want to be something really egregious, and Obamacare is the perfect example. Another one that might rise to the occasion, you'd have to do a temperature check to see, but would be Dodd-Frank, maybe another one that would rise to that occasion because it's killing businesses all over the country that can't get loans to expand their businesses. So that may be another one. But Obamacare, certainly. You wouldn't want to be able to just repeal anything because then you're creating a balance in the other direction. But it's not 3/4, it's only 2/3. So it's a lower threshold than it is to ratify something.
Recently, when they repealed the lead law, you familiar with that? With
The what?
lead in children's, they passed it was a law about the lead content in children's toys, and inadvertently, ATVs and motorcycles for youths were covered under there. And they suspended it for some amount of time, and then just recently it was overturned. And I'm wondering if it was a similar, something you're not familiar with, but I'm wondering if it's a similar process that took place that you just described.
I'm not sure, but wasn't it Congress that repealed it?
It was.
Yeah, so that's different because Congress repealed their own law, which they've always been able to do, but this would be the states.
Restore the states.
Right.
Because the judiciary, the whole Commerce Clause, and all these departments are
Right.
based on is because the Senate ratifies judicial, and the judicial in half a dozen decisions since 1913 when all this was put in place. That's most of the mischief is around that.
Right. And even Alexander Hamilton and many of our founders never envisioned the court being the most powerful branch. They never envisioned it being the most powerful branch, and that is exactly what has happened with our system of government today. And I believe, and the founders believed that most of the power, even Alexander Hamilton, who was for the Constitution and was for federal government, even he said, if you read the Federalist Papers, that if there's any out-of-balance check, that you should never worry that the federal government will get out of balance because that's the job of the states. That was the assurance that Alexander Hamilton gave the anti-federalists. You should never worry because the states can keep the federal government in power. So we've even gone beyond what Alexander Hamilton said would be the case. And it was said that the courts would not be the most powerful, and they currently are. We've got to take the power out of Washington and give it back to the people and to the states, is what we need. We've got to remember that the Constitution still matters, and we've got to remember that it matters who we elect. So with that, thank you very much. And if you'd like to help, please see me in the back.